Okay, bro, what did I just read? Julia had always been the quiet type, the kind of person who blended into the background. She worked in a small, sleepy town where nothing ever seemed to happen. But Julia had a secret, one she had kept buried deep within herself for as long as she could remember. She could read the thoughts of others, not just the fleeting surface-level musings, but the darkest, most hidden corners of their minds and influence the decisions they made. When she was a child, she thought everyone could hear the things she did, the deep burning thoughts neighbors had about one another, the silent screams of her mother's despair and the twisted fantasies of her father's hidden desires. But as she grew older, she knew it was just her. And not only could she hear these thoughts, but she could twist them, reshape them, like molding clay. She could plant an idea, a fear, a compulsion, and watch as it took. Julia had tried to use her ability for good once. She had silenced the violent thoughts of a man who was about to unalive his wife, replacing them with guilt and remorse. But the effect she had on the man was too strong. The man had walked into the woods the next day and never returned. After that, she vowed never to use her gift again. She hid it away, convinced it was a curse. But now, at 32, Julia couldn't ignore it any longer. Something was wrong in her town. People were disappearing. First a high schooler, then a shopkeeper, and most importantly, her mother. The police were baffled, but she knew better. She feels it in the air, creeping, a malevolent presence that moves through the air like a disease, and the whispers were getting louder. One evening, as she was closing up the library, she heard its voice, distinct from the usual cacophony of the whispers. It was soft, almost soothing, but there was something deeply wrong about it. "Come to the old mill," it said. "You already know why." Julia's heart raced. She tried to block out, to shut it off as she had done so many times before, but the voice was relentless. It was inside her, crawling through her mind like a parasite. She knew had to confront it. The old mill stood on the outskirts of town for decades. When Julia arrived, the front door was shattered and the wooden beams groaned in the wind. Julia approached cautiously, her breath visible in the cold night air. The voice grew louder, insistent. "Come inside." She pushed open the door and stepped into the darkness. The air was thick with the scent of decay. And then she saw him. Or what was left of him. His skin was pale and cracked, his eyes black voids that seemed to swallow the light. He smiled, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "You hear them, don't you?" he said, his voice in her mind. "The things they don't want anyone to know. But I hear them too, and I use them." Julia felt a wave of nausea fill her stomach and rush up her chest. This man, this thing, it was twisted and monstrous. He had manipulated the town, feeding their fears, their darkest desires, and turning them against one another. The disappearances weren't random or unavoidable. They were his doing. "Join me," he said, extending a hand that looked more like a claw. "Yea, together we could be unstoppable." Julia's mind raced. She could feel his malevolent presence trying to enter her mind and threatening to consume her. She also felt something else tucked far away in her mind fighting to get out, something oddly familiar, something within herself, a strength she had forgotten. Julia closed her eyes and focused, not on his thoughts, but on her own. She imagined a wall, impenetrable and unyielding, and pushing it outward, forcing him out of her mind. The man screamed, a sound that was both human and otherworldly. He stumbled backward, his form wavering as if he were made of smoke. "You can't stop me!" he roared. But Julia wasn't done. She reached into his mind, past the layers of darkness, and found the kernel of humanity that still remained. Julia channels all her power and amplified the tiny amount of human left in him. It flooded him with guilt and remorse. Finally, in despair, the man fell to his knees, his stomach coning. "Please," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I'll stop." Julia hesitates, contemplating all that has happened, then consumes him, cherishing every bite.